Hey everybody, hope you're doing good today. Neil the Knife Guy here. This is my first video since the new year, so happy new year to all of you. Hope you had a good one and hope this new year treats you well. Been carrying my Sage 5 a lot. It's a really great pocket hog, if you want to call it that. Something that sort of bumps other knives out of my pocket pretty much on a daily basis. It's been actually a real struggle to carry anything other than this, but I've been sort of forcing myself to carry other knives. Just a great everyday carry, a very capable knife, and one that when I first seen this advertised I knew I had to get, and I'm extremely glad that I did actually purchase this. A knife that sort of screams Spyderco would be the Sage line. It's all Spyderco design from tip to butt, and really glad they decided to highlight their compression lock in this series of knives. It's no surprise that this knife is one of my favorites, because the Sage 1 is also one of my favorites and one of my most used and carry knives to date. And really the only difference between these two would be the lock mechanism and the sort of style of G10. This is the G10 carbon fiber laminate. A lot of people don't like it because it's not true carbon fiber, but I could really care less. If it cuts the cost down of the knives, then I'm fine with it. Gives it that sort of carbon fiber look, and it gives it sort of a nice texture. Not grippy like G10 would be, but still has some good texture. And for most of my knives, I don't require a lot of grip to them. I sort of rely on hand strength and the ergonomics of the knife to provide that grip for me. And the ergonomics on this knife are stellar. Really hard to beat the feel in hand of a Sage. Especially for my hands, it just fits all the right areas perfectly. So you got this forward finger choil and this secondary choil here if you decide to choke up on it, and it's super comfortable in that grip. If you did want to scoot back and grip it that way, also very comfortable. Thumb still lands on the thumb ramp, and just a great feeling knife overall. Gonna try something different with this video. Usually I don't sort of give prices or that sort of thing, but you could find this knife in Canada at Warriors and Wonders for $184.99. That's what I paid for it. And in the US at Blade HQ they have it listed as $137.97. The pros of this knife would be those great ergonomics in pretty much any handhold you could imagine. You don't feel that wire clip pretty much at all in any grip, and that's a real sort of point of a hot spot on a lot of knives, would be that wire clip. You want to test this out, maybe just take the clip off your knife and try gripping it and using it for a day, and you'll notice how sort of much that pocket clip, I don't want to say interferes, but interferes with the grip of the knife. Definitely feels a lot more comfortable without a pocket clip, but this knife here is one of the least sort of hot spot causing, just because of that pocket clip. This knife is very lightweight. As someone who's not really concerned of the weight of the knife, still I find this knife very lightweight, and for how lightweight it is, it's a very strong knife. Stainless steel liners, the compression lock, and just a well thought out pivot system. You get a very strong and capable knife in a very lightweight and small package. The action on this when I got it was stiff, but within a few days of just using it and flicking it open, the action smoothed right out. You can see if I hold down the compression lock, it bounces off the stop pin and pops out. So very comparable with your other sort of bushing systems from Spyderco. Very smooth. And a great sort of rendition of the compression lock. The construction on this knife is pretty simple, very easy to take apart and maintain, although Spyderco doesn't really like you taking apart their knives. I've stripped out a few screws taking a knife apart and contacted Spyderco, and they still sent me screws to replace the ones I stripped. They also send a little letter saying we do not condone taking apart your knife, but even though they do say that, and maybe it's not in the best taste for a company to do that, they still sent me the parts out free of charge. Never had a bad experience with Spyderco's warranty service, so can't really speak too negatively about that. Like I said before, it's a classic Spyderco shape. If you're into Spyderco as a company, you do yourself a service to own any one of the Sage series knives. There's no blade play in this whatsoever when locked up or down or side to side. When I first got this, I did loosen up the pivot a little bit, and there was a little bit of blade play, so I ended up just tightening it back up and letting the knife break in naturally, and I think that's a lot to do with not getting blade play. If you tend to loosen up your pivot, and when you first get your knife and use it, the washers might wear a little unevenly and you'll always have blade play. I tend to let the knife break in and let the parts match up together as they break in, so most of my knives are rock solid, and I think that's a lot to do with sort of how these knives are put together. They're put together a little bit over toleranced, so that maybe the parts do need to wear against each other to make that very smooth, sought after action. Compression lock is done well on this knife. There's no pivot bushing system on this knife, it's just your straight up regular pivot. So screw going into a female on both ends, and there's not that sort of dance you have to do with the Paramilitary 2, where you have to tighten the stop pin screw and the pivot screw sort of independently to get that action you're looking for. This one, it's just one screw and you have the action you're looking for. Blade centering is still spot on this one. I've heard a couple people say their centering's a little off from one side to the other, but on this sample here, it's perfect. Ease of opening on this knife, I'm going to compare it to the Sage 1. I find the Sage 1 easier to get at the thumb hole here just because of this large cutout. So your thumb could find that and get full purchase on it without sort of touching any of the sides, any of the G10 handle, and you could open it up. That's not to say that this one isn't, but when you're opening it, your thumb is contacting from pretty much here up on the hole, and the handle sort of including that a little bit. Still very easy to open no matter which way you want to do it. So in my initial video of this, when I took it apart, I said that the stop pin was sort of shared, sort of double duty with this back spot here. I've marked it with a marker and opened it and closed it, and this part does touch that pin there, so that's acting as a stop pin. Also, there's an internal stop pin, so I still stand by what I said in my first video taking this apart, that there's a double stop pin. This one also acts as the lockup for the compression lock. But you could, let's see if I can get this on video here. So you could sort of see a line going across right here, and that's where it's actually touching this pin here. So a very neat design, very sturdy design. Now moving on to some maybe cons of this knife. I did contact Spyderco about this, and they said it was a sort of common thing with the Sage 5. And what I'm talking about is that in the closed position here, there's a little bit of movement in the detent. You can see as I move this blade, the tip moves a little bit. If you just look right up here while I'm doing this. So there's a little bit of slop in the actual detent. They said it was a common thing and they heard it quite a bit. Don't know if they plan to remedy that. Doesn't affect the action, doesn't affect the strength at which this closes. You can't shake out the knife, so it's not affecting the detent overall. Just something I thought I'd mention, that there is a little bit of play in the closed position, up and down. And something else I noticed about this, due to this not having a screw, the stop pin here or the lock pin, you can see the action right now, it drops free. But if you give some pressure here and squeeze it, and I put a lot of pressure into that, and you open it up, it won't drop free anymore. So there's a little bit of sort of inconsistency in how sort of this section of the knife is put together, but still doesn't affect the action, doesn't affect the overall usability of the knife. And that's really what I'm concerned about in a knife. Not too concerned about blade centering as long as it doesn't rub. Not too concerned as long as the knife still functions as it's intended to. And this is a really great knife for function. Spyderco is usually known for function over form, even though some of their knives look really nice. Even if it's a fugly knife, it still works really great as a user knife. So these are just some points I thought I'd put on film here and upload a video. Haven't done one in the new year, so wanted to start it off with one of my favorite knives of the new year. So thanks for watching this video, guys. If you've been thinking about buying a Sage, go ahead and do it. I really don't think you'll be disappointed at all. So thanks for watching this video, guys, and stay tuned for more.